In previous videos, I've talked about acquiring clients by focusing on an ideal client profile. I'm still very serious about that, and I think it's the best way to run your business if you're delivering truly comprehensive financial services to affluent, ideal clients. But there is one situation where I have found that working with a do-it-yourselfer can be a wonderful experience. Hi, this is Mark Little. I'm talking about client acquisition and how I became #1 top producer nationwide at my firm, even though I was an introvert and still am. I did this by attracting people who are already looking for the level of service that I provided. So what I'm recommending in all these videos, and I've got more than 100 videos available for you to go through, but when it comes to client acquisition, my best piece of advice is to differentiate yourself, not just a little bit from other financial advisors, but radically different. And if you have a client couple that you're working with, there's one situation where if one of the spouses leans towards being a do-it-yourselfer, even a hardcore do-it-yourselfer, but the other spouse fits the profile of the client you serve best to a T. In a situation like that, where you can provide a great value, a value that other advisors are not even seeking, because most financial advisors steer clear of do-it-yourselfers, and it's actually a good thing, except in this one situation. Let me say a word about differentiation just for a minute. You need to create some reputation that you have for being the only game in town. For me, I tried to pick several areas where I felt my team and myself, we could deliver extraordinary value in a way that no other firm in town would be able or willing to provide. So a lot of the things that we talk about in these videos have to do with service standards, the idea of offering a level of service and a level of responsiveness to clients that no other firm is willing to match. So that's one. You can beat other firms on service standards, especially in this environment. But the key is to be able to look at a potential client and with confidence in the areas that you're providing extraordinary value, and to just put a stake in the ground and say, we have a process for that, and I'm not sure if what we do at this firm is precisely what you're looking for, but if it is, we can save you some time. There is no other firm in town that delivers this level of service for that, whatever it is, specialty that you are really good at. Just think about this. If you have an extraordinary, comprehensive financial planning process, is there a way that you could describe what you do uniquely to where you could say, we are the only firm in this market that delivers this level of service to clients? And then you go on to decide if that's what they're looking for. It's all about fit. But let me go back to the situation of the do-it-yourselfer. I know many of you out there have decided that I'm only going to work with clients that both spouses fit the profile of the client that you serve best. But I want to give you a scenario where I think if you become known for this reputation, you can build a market around this. And oftentimes it involves one of the two spouses being a do-it-yourselfer. The scenario is this. Let's say you have a couple and one of the two spouses is actually managing all the financial affairs. And this is very common. It's a division of labor in a marriage. You have one spouse that knows where all the money is, knows how it's orchestrated, and really does a pretty good job, frankly. But then you have the other spouse who isn't. So that's the scenario. The person managing the financial affairs is a do-it-yourselfer, and the other spouse maybe even doesn't like money but hates it. Just really, they can't ever talk about it because one of them loves it, one of them hates it, or some version of that. This is a scenario where you can really help. This is where a do-it-yourselfer can actually step up and become a, Let's call it ideal client wannabe. This can come out just in conversation with friends and acquaintances. If you haven't watched all of my videos, the method that I've always used to acquire clients is just going out and grabbing coffee with friends and catching up. So 10 times a week, I'm sitting down with a non-client, not for business, but just for personal. And I get the people that I know, my friends and acquaintances, to introduce me to the people that they know. So I have an expanding network of friends. I have enough that I'm meeting with 10 people a week, and some people I meet with twice a year, some people I meet with 3 times a year, sometimes I meet with people 4 times a year. I'm just deepening the relationship by grabbing coffee with friends and acquaintances. What do you talk about? You talk about what friends and acquaintances normally talk about. The point is, you're not selling, you're just catching up with a friend. But in the conversation, here's the question that I'll always ask. Do you and your spouse manage the finances of your family together? Or how does that work? This is where the reality will emerge. Your friend will say, "Oh, I do. I manage all the financial affairs." Then the follow-up question from you would be, how well could your spouse manage all this if you weren't around? That's where this scenario will emerge. Either they manage the financial affairs and they don't have confidence that their spouse could or would want to manage the affairs. That right there is the scenario. By the way, it could be the reverse. It could say, "Not me. My spouse manages everything and I just hate it." So whichever way it goes, you have one spouse that is managing things on their own and the other spouse that not only is unable or unwilling to manage the assets, but to some degree really dreads the task. This is where you could build a reputation for fixing that problem. The critical question is to ask your friend, so then what happens if something happens to you? What happens then? And just let them walk through the scenario for you, like how they think that's going to work. I've done this so many times. They'll say some version of, "Oh, it will be a disaster." They'll hate it and they won't know where everything is. And I've got things structured in the investments or whatever it is a certain way. It would just be a mess. That's the situation. It comes up more frequently than you would realize. And for you to be able to say in a non-business environment, just to drop the pin, put a pin marker in the conversation, and you just say, "We've got a process for that." As a matter of fact, our firm specializes in situations like that. Just leave it there. Let them know this. The point is, when you start taking over a client account like that, where you've got one client that fits the profile of the ideal client perfectly, this is the client that hates dealing with the money, and then you've got the other client, the spouse, who is a hardcore do-it-yourselfer, then this is where you establish the relationship on a contingency basis. You explain, as I always do, that we only work with ideal clients, and I'll make a deal with you that since your concern is if something happens to you, that everything's mapped out. I've already told you we have a process for putting together a game plan with a playbook in case the unimaginable happens and something happens to you, even temporarily. Like if you're in a car accident or something and you can't manage the affairs for even just 2 or 3 months, but your specialty will become, I will create a game plan and a playbook so that if something happens to you, things will continue to be managed as well or even better than you do right now. We have a process where in 104 days, we put this all together, and the relationship is we meet every 4 months for the rest of your life just to keep up with course corrections. Things happen in your life, things happen in financial markets, things happen in world events. Every plan needs course correction. So you're looking for some ground rules to be set in place to where I know you've loved doing this in the past, but for the next 104 days, we'll do this together with the agreement that we will manage things to your specifications or better, and we'll sit down and reassess this every 4 months. You allow us to manage your financial affairs at a level that's acceptable to you or even higher, and I will guarantee you 3 things. So the game plan and the playbook will be up and running in 104 days, and I pledge 3 outcomes. As you're working with us, I personally guarantee you'll always be on track to your goals, you'll never have any financial surprises, and you'll be making better decisions on your financial affairs overall than you ever have in the past, not just in investment management, in all financial decisions. I'll put my reputation on the line and say, we'll be meeting every 4 months, but a year from today, this won't be me telling you that you're on track, no surprises, and making better financial decisions. I guarantee you'll be telling me that, or we'll just say the experiment failed. So what you've just done is you've gotten a spouse that really is terrified that if something happened to them, this whole thing would be a mess. And to fix that problem, it involves handing over the reins to a firm that claims to be able to do this even better than they are right now. And they're pledging 3 outcomes, and they've got skin in the game. What could the skin in the game be? You could say, a year from today, you'll agree that this exceeded your expectations, or I'll buy you a gift certificate to the best restaurant in town on me, and we will part as friends. So what you have to be capable of doing, and we can help you do this. I do videos on this frequently, but how do you actually put together a comprehensive written lifetime financial strategy in 104 days? And where does the 104 days come from? This is a data-driven strategy. We discovered long ago that when you acquire a client, you have to be meeting with them frequently enough that they feel forward progress. So we meet with the client, they hire us in this way, we meet again 14 days later. That's the period, that 2 weeks, where we gather whatever items or documents or information that's still missing. The first 14 days is about making sure we have everything we need to create a comprehensive written lifetime financial strategy. And then we have 2 45-day periods. We have a 45-day period where the objective of that meeting is to have the draft strategy ready for discussion with the client. We go through that, make sure that we've got all the objectives resolved, anything that involves money and planning, we've got the plan in place, and we have an additional 45 days where we align all the elements of the plan, the financial planning, the money management, the estate planning, the tax, the insurance and risk and safety. We spend 45 days doing a deep dive in each of those 5 areas, in essence, to see what we might have missed and to perfectly align all these areas so they're working together. So that's 104 days. 14 days plus 2 45-day periods. You have 3 meetings with the client. You have a comprehensive written lifetime financial strategy in place that's created at a higher level than any other firm in your community, and we'll talk to you about how to do that. But the point is, you've got a thorough strategy with a much deeper objective to the client's satisfaction, that you are now managing things to their expectations as well or better than they were managing things on their own. And then you meet with them. In our process, we meet every 4 months. That's 3 times a year. We call it the 3-meeting process. But you've got a rhythm set up to where, as their situation changes, as the market changes, if you need to rebalance the portfolio or tax issues come up at some point in the year, you've got recurring meetings on the calendar, but not too many, like not quarterly, which clients are often frustrated at meeting with their advisor too frequently. But you're meeting with the client at the perfect cadence for you to get the information you need to be able to deliver on the guarantees. The point that I'm getting at is you are solving the biggest problem that they worry about, which is, how's my spouse going to manage things if something happens to me? They're willing to hire a professional to give it a try. In essence, it's a 104-day testing period, but a commitment to try it for a year. They agree that they will try to release the reins. I call it, they'll agree to be a financial delegator wannabe. I have to ask permission that whenever I see you not being a financial delegator, you have to agree to let me coach you through that. You're solving a problem, and then you've set up a rhythm where somebody who just didn't think anybody could step into the complex situation and understand it well enough to manage it, to a new scenario where 12 months later, you can guarantee that they'll always be on track to their objectives. How do you guarantee that? Because you're meeting with them every 4 months or at a frequency, and you explain to them things will drift off course when we're not meeting. That's normal. But we've set the system up so that every 4 months we course correct. If something needs to be changed, we will already know about it. When you come in, we'll already have the recommendations ready for you to review so that you get back on track. It's all about course corrections. The second thing is, how on earth do you pledge or guarantee no financial surprises? This is where the ground rules of the relationship have to be really well understood. We've made this pledge for decades to clients, and the way it's explained is we will guarantee that you'll never have any financial surprises that could have been avoided by proper planning. So we're not talking about if there's a war in the Middle East and the markets decline suddenly. Those are not covered under this guarantee. What we're pledging is that we're going to be so thorough, we're going to be so proactive, we're going to be organized in their financial affairs that anything that could have been planned for, we've got a checklist-driven system so that nothing falls through the cracks. Again, this is what I talk about in these videos. How do you create a system that's rock solid so that nothing falls through the cracks? That's what it's all about. And in uncertain times, and especially for a do-it-yourselfer spouse who's concerned about what happens if something happens to them, solving this problem actually becomes a niche. This is something that builds your reputation precedes you, and that right there is marketing. You've pledged that you'll always be on track to your goals, you won't have any financial surprises, and the third promise is that you will be making better decisions on all areas of your finance than you ever have before, not just in investments, but across all their financial decisions. We'll talk in other videos how to do that. The bottom line is you need to make sure that you're asking about their largest expenditures before they happen, not after. We've got a rock-solid process for, at every meeting, anticipating the largest expenditures that are coming up over the next 36 months. But just imagine this, having a business niche worked out, not for every client. You're obviously looking for ideal clients only. But when you stumble across this situation, I want you to think of it the way I discovered it. It had never occurred to me until I saw it with my own eyes. You have a spouse that's really good at organizing and running the financial affairs, and then you have another spouse that hates it or just doesn't understand it. A potential client in that situation, they are looking for someone, consciously or not consciously, who's technically competent and worthy of trust. You are presenting yourself and holding yourself out as someone who can plug that hole. You can solve this problem, and you're not talking like any other financial advisor. Rather than listing the services that you provide, like financial planning and estate planning and education planning and retirement planning or investment management and tax services or whatever it is, this is what 99% of advisors present to potential clients, just a laundry list of services. And that's great, except what clients are looking for is outcomes. When you start talking about being on track to their goals, when you start talking about no surprises, when you start talking about making better financial decisions, and you'll guarantee that you will exceed their expectations, or else you'll waive your fee for a quarter. Something that puts skin in the game. You could promise to make a $1,000 donation to the charity of their choice in their name. But the idea that any advisor pledges outcomes, not services, and is willing to put skin in the game, I've learned from experience. If you want to know how people shoot from like last place at the firm because I was an introvert to #1 top producer nationwide, it's figuring out how to differentiate yourself from literally every other financial advisor in your market. So with that, I'll end it there, and we will look forward to seeing you in the next video.